Hi y'all, welcome back to Live and Transparent. We are back after a couple of weeks of not uploading. We're finally back.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, we went out of town and we had so much fun. We got to experience and explore a lot of new things, and we're just grateful that we had that opportunity. But like Melanie said, we are back and we are ready, just to keep uploading more videos. And a big refresher from the last time is that we were still reading about how we are close to the crucifixion of Jesus, and we actually ended up in where Jesus mentions that no one knows the day or the hour that of his return. And he was previous to that, he was just warning the disciples of everything that was going to happen and everything that was going to take place, like I said, leading up to the crucifixion.
Yeah, so we are now continuing on chapter 14, which is on page 68. And this is a plot to kill Jesus. So in this part, they're eating and they're planning on how to kill Jesus. They're kind of coming up with the plan on how to kill him and how to approach or how to actually go and
they wanted a smart way of doing so. And also a big refresher is that we had already seen, the high priest and all of them trying to find ways to accuse Jesus. We would always see oh, well, what do you think about this? Or what about, they always try to trap Jesus. And now they're actually to the point of where they're wanting to kill him and make a plan to kill him.
Yeah, so they were watching his every move and they're he's doing this now, so we can probably do this. So now they in this part they were saying how they're not going to do it during the feast. And it says, lest there be an uproar of the people. So I feel like they were kind of afraid of how the people would react to them killing Jesus.
They didn't want to make a huge commotion. Yeah. And then we go on to Jesus anointed at Bethany. I really like this story. I had always I had read this before, but I guess I never really took it upon myself to grasp the true importance of it. But here a woman came with an alabaster flask of ointment, and she broke the flask and poured it over Jesus' head. And this woman was Mary of Bethany. And people were saying why, the people around that witnesses were saying, why was the ointment wasted like that? For this ointment could have been sold for more and given to the poor. So I guess breaking it down, Mary does this beautiful thing for Jesus, anointing Jesus, and people are questioning her motive. And here you can see that Mary recognized that she had Jesus right in front of her, which now I'm thinking that a lot of people missed the opportunity, because we had read how Jesus was rejected at his hometown. They missed the opportunity. They didn't realize that Jesus was right in front of them. But here Mary realizes, she's like, no, Jesus is right here.
Advantage of her opportunity.
Yeah. And I wrote, that Mary did this without a doubt. She was anointing the Messiah, and people looked at the oil on Jesus' head and considered it wasted.
That's crazy.
That, when I was rereading this last night, I kind of broke down, because I was people to consider something towards the act of doing something for Jesus and considering it wasted,
that's
what, and moving on, Jesus, he tells the people that had said, oh, this is wasted, why would you do that? Jesus said, she has done a beautiful thing to me, but you will not always have me. And truly I say to you, wherever the gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will be told in memory of her. So Jesus was telling the people around them, no, what she did is something beautiful. And this is the first time that we read about something like this. It hadn't been done before until Mary does this for Jesus. And I also wrote, Mary seemed to have a better understanding than the disciples, because I was thinking well, why didn't any of the disciples do such a beautiful thing for Jesus before? And Mary, she just like did it, you know. She recognized who she had in front of her, and she, in a way, she used the resources that she had. You know, she had that alabaster flask full of ointment, and she used that.
Yeah. And in a way, when the disciples were like, why are you wasting the ointment like that? I feel like in a way they were a little jealous as to like how she was doing it with such, like, out of her heart with so much love. I feel like they were kind of jealous, as in like, well, we love him too, but we're not doing that like you are, you know?
Yeah.
They were kind of like comparing themselves to what she was doing, and they were like, I feel like they were jealous that she was demonstrating her love more passionately than they.
Yeah, and I also wrote that Mary intended this as a gift in preparation for the burial of Jesus. You know, this was a preparation still leading up to the crucifixion, you know.
That's crazy. And we move on to the next part, the infamous story of Judas, where Judas betrays Jesus. So here Judas went to the chief priest to betray Jesus. And when they heard it, they were like obviously so glad. They were so happy. Like,
yeah, it was like, oh, they were looking for a plan, and here Judas comes, and he's like, oh, you know,
he's a hero of their story.
Yeah.
And so he looked for the opportunity to betray Jesus, in order for him to get some money, some extra cash.
Yeah. So here, Judas was willing to make money off of Jesus's life. You know, that's
crazy. And it's so crazy that Judas went. He didn't like. No one told him to go and betray Jesus. He came up with the idea himself.
He willingly chose to do that.
It was his motive and no one else's. And I was reading a commentary that said God used a willing Satan who used a willing Judas, and God did not prompt Judas to sin. No one prompted Judas to do this, but yet
it was his own desire of money, actually, because he was like, you know what, if I do this, I'm gonna get money.
He went back to his old self before he was
old habit.
And that's crazy how I was telling Ashley right now how, like, every time I think about the story of Judas, it amazes me how Judas had the heart to betray Jesus. But yet again, she was saying how, well, everyone could have been Judas. Yeah. But I'm still kind of like, dang, like, that was Jesus you betrayed. Like, that's crazy. Like, for money?
Yeah, and it's crazy that there was also a disciple willing to betray Jesus. A disciple, you know, like we read that, like, and we know that there's 12 disciples. One of the 12, one of like the most intimate group of Jesus.
He sat next to Jesus.
Yeah,
at the table,
and like but that one of them, Judas, was the one that betrayed Jesus, and that's just,
and the fact that Jesus had told them, like, one of you is gonna betray me. Like, yeah, of course not.
Yeah, this is actually like where we're going into the next story, which is the Passover with the disciples. So they were going to prepare to eat the Passover, and this was kind of, in a way, a final important talk to the disciples from Jesus. You know, one of the last I guess scenarios that we see all of the disciples together before the crucifixion. And here Jesus, what Melody just said, he says to the disciples, truly I say to you, one of you will betray me, one who is eating with me. And I kind of I was reading this book a while back ago that was like, don't let the enemy sit at your table, and talking about how Jesus prepares the table for us. And here, like, reading about, like, saying where Jesus said, one of you who is eating with me, like, Judas was at the table because Jesus invited him, but then Judas is the one that betrays him.
That's,
you know. And then Jesus continues saying, it is one of the 12, one who is dipping bread into the dish with me. And for the Son of Man goes as it is written of him, it would have been better for that man if he had not been born. That, all of that is so, like, impactful and so, like, oh my goodness, you know. And here, as Jesus is talking to the disciples, he mentions that one will betray him, you know. And I imagine all the disciples, like, looking like, who, like, oh my goodness, like, yeah. And Judas, knowing that it's him, I wish I could like see that, you know, like whenever like I kind of imagine it like whenever you're like stuck in a lie, you're like, you know, and I just like imagine like Judas like the face of Judas like hearing Jesus say this.
I bet he was probably like,
He was like,
anyways,
yeah. But here I also wrote that this was like a choice, and there was a choice for like Judas to repent, you know, because like I feel like Jesus saying all of this in that moment, Judas could have probably been like, you know what, it's me, I'm so sorry, you know, look, this is what we had planned, this is what's gonna happen. But he didn't, you know, he just sat there listening to all of that. And I also wrote that Jesus was identifying the betrayer as a friend, someone that was sitting with him, someone that was eating with him, someone that was in the most intimate of his circle, someone that had gone through so much with Jesus, you know, had seen all the miracles, all the blessings, yet he was a betrayer.
That's crazy. And that's, I wrote here how Jesus loved Judas so much that he decided to give him a second chance, and he threw it away. He was like, no. I bet he was like, I don't know, sometimes I think, and I'll be like, he probably was like so terrified of like, maybe he did it already and he probably thought like there's no going back now. But either way, I would have been like, well, Jesus, yeah. But I don't know, that's crazy.
It's like a tough, I guess, situation.
Yeah.
That he put himself in there. You know, he put himself into that situation.
He chose to be in that situation.
Yeah. Yep, he did.
That's crazy. So then we move on to the next part, which is the institution of the Lord's Supper. And here is where he takes the bread. He takes, where he tells them that this is my body. And he took the cup and he gives it to them. And he says, this is my blood, the covenant, which is poured out for many. Truly I say to you, I will not drink again of the fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it from the kingdom of God.
Mm-hmm.
And so here, I was saying actually how the focus was no longer on the suffering of Israel and Egypt, which is the Old Testament, and we are now in the New Testament, where the focus is now the sin-bearing suffering of Jesus on our behalf.
Yeah, and also like the bread and the cup had a symbolic meaning of Jesus, just like you mentioned right now.
Yeah, and it says take. It's not saying like here you need to take it. Like he's not forcing them to take it. It means that it won't be forced upon us, but we have to receive it. You know, it's up to us to take it and take the cup, you know, and drink from the cup and eat from the bread.
Yeah.
So he's not forcing anything on us, just like he wasn't forcing anything upon the disciples.
Yeah, that's very true. We don't serve a forceful God. You know, we said, like we've said, you have to accept Jesus, and in that way, it's like what you were saying basically. And we move on to Jesus foretells Peter's denial. So we've read about Peter, you know, we said that Peter was always the one, like, he was so, like, prone to speaking, you know, he would always speak. He was always, like, I guess you could assume that he was, like, the bold disciple because of what we read. And here, Jesus is talking to Peter, and he said, but after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee. And Peter said to Jesus, even though they all fall away, I will not. You know, right there, he made a really big promise. And Jesus said to Peter, truly I tell you that this very night before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times. Peter was so confident that he wasn't going to deny Jesus. You know, he was like, no, I'm going to stand, you know, all this is going to happen, everything you've been talking about, but I'm going to be right there by your side. I'm going to be so faithful to you. You know, that's what Peter was basically saying. And Jesus was like, no, I know exactly what's going to happen. I know that it's going to be hard, you know? And Peter continues saying, if I must die with you, I will not deny you. And they all said the same thing. But what I wrote here, and what I was also like pondering last night, was that they couldn't see the spiritual reality and battles that was going to happen with everything that Jesus was going to go through. You know, because like sometimes, and I was telling Melanie, sometimes it's like when we're like all fine, you know, like life is going good, you're good, God has been faithful, and you you just like things are going your way and you're like, oh God, I'm gonna serve you this way, I'm gonna keep going to church, I'm gonna keep reading my Bible and this, and then you make those huge promises, just like Peter was making this huge promise, and then something happens, something goes wrong along the way, and you break that promise that you like made. And I just kind of like tied it up with that, because you don't see the spiritual reality in battles, but Jesus, he knew everything that was going to happen. He knew the effect that it would have on the disciples. So he was telling Peter, like, no, like, unfortunately, you're going to deny me.
Jesus knew Peter better than Peter knew himself.
Yes, that's very true. And he knows all of us better than ourselves.
And this part is a very important part of the story, which is when Jesus prays in Gethsemane. And here he's praying. And here I feel like in this moment, Jesus needed all the support that he could possibly have. I feel like he was in agony knowing that he was going to die, what's
like,
going to happen.
Knowing what's coming, I mean, like,
that's, like, imagine knowing when you're going to die.
Yeah.
That times 10, because he was going to die in a very gruesome way.
Yeah, he was. So I can't imagine.
Yeah, I feel like he was in a lot of agony.
Desperation,
He was like, I don't know, he probably like when you have something really important the next day and you can't sleep, that, but like in a really, really, really bad way.
Yeah.
So he told his disciples, sit here while I pray. And he took Peter, James, and John. And he had told them how he was going to pray and everything. So he said, my soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch. So he had told them that he was going through some hard times. He was like, like, I'm not feeling so well right now, like, I'm gonna die, And even after he knew that he was gonna come back after the third day, he knew the whole plan, but yet he was still afraid, because he was human, he
was in a human form. Obviously, like, he was going to like feel all of his emotions.
Yeah. So then he started praying and everything, and he had told God, he was like, Abba, Father, all the things are possible to you, for you. So he was like, I know everything, there's nothing impossible for you. And he said, remove this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. So he was saying, like, if you're like, I'd rather not, but if you want to, like, I'm gonna do it. He wasn't like saying, like, I'm not gonna do it, I don't want to do it. He said, I'd rather not do it, but if you want me to do it, then I will do it.
Yeah, and I had never really caught the concept of this, like, until it was one day we were in Bible study and we were reading this, and someone questioned, like, what does it mean, like, remove this cup from me? And it was like what you just said, like, Jesus in a human form, knowing what he's gonna go through. He was perfect, he didn't sin, but he was going to die for the sin of others. He was like, I feel so much pain. And when actually, like, this past Easter, I was like crying, and I was like, oh my goodness, like, like, knowing that Jesus prayed this prayer, it's very impactful, and very emotional too.
It makes you realize
how deep his love is, and also like the amount of pain that sin causes.
I was saying actually we were talking about it like a couple of weeks back, how I had never experienced an Easter like this last Easter, where I was truly conscious of what had happened and what Jesus had to go through and everything.
Like his emotions. Yeah. Like once you realize all of that, like, the like emotions of Jesus, what the prayers that Jesus prayed, and then like seeing, because there was like a little
they did a little like play church, and I was like, oh my goodness, like, yeah, it made me feel, I was so conscious about everything that I was like, dang, I take this for granted. And like, I knew the story, I knew that he had died and he had resurrected, but I had never, I knew, but I hadn't really
gone into it like that deep.
When I was reading this again, I was like, no way. Like he was like, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
He said, if you want me to do it, if it's necessary for me to do it, then I will do it.
Yeah. Jesus wanted the cup to be taken away, but instead he was strengthened to take the cup.
Yeah. That's so powerful.
And also, like, I think we had mentioned this a while back, where not what I will, but what you will. This is such a powerful prayer.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like acknowledging that, you know, it's not what I want, but it's what God has planned for my life, and it's what God wants me to do.
And the faith behind that prayer, knowing that,
Oh, yeah.
do whatever you want to do with me. Like I'm giving you full control of this. Like,
Yeah.
whatever happens will happen, but like I'm trusting you. Like, all the faith that must have been behind that prayer, that's like,
Yeah, to pray this prayer, it's a, like we mentioned one time, it's a dangerous prayer, because it's like, you know, like complete surrendering, complete control. And to see that, you know, Jesus prayed this prayer too moments before his arrest and betrayal, like that's
it hits like a spot that makes you.
yeah, very emotional.
So then he goes on and says, Simon, are you asleep? And this part is like, he called him Simon and not Peter. Yeah. And I was like, why Simon? And then I was reading, and it was because Simon, the old Simon was asleep.
Yeah.
And the new Peter was always ready to be attacked.
Which Peter's name used to be Simon, but once Jesus, like, he was part of the disciples, Jesus changed his name from Simon to Peter. And because I completely missed this part until Melanie was telling me that, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so true, because Jesus called him Simon as his old self.
And imagine being called, imagine being Peter and then just calling you Simon. Like, I feel like that's a wake up call. Like oh, like I must be doing something like wrong. So then Jesus goes on to say, could you not watch 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak.
Yeah, and here he's like, not only is he talking to Peter in this situation, but also in like what's going to happen of Peter betraying him. He's like telling him, like, you know, like, don't fall into temptation, because it's so true that the flesh is weak. You know, it is weak.
Yeah, so I feel like Jesus here was being like direct. He was like, I need you to do this because it's for your own good, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like Jesus knew that Peter was gonna fail, so he kept encouraging him to like, come on, let's pray, or like, we got this. And yet again, he didn't. He went back to sleep. So Jesus went away and prayed, and yet again, when he came back, they were still sleeping for the third time. And he said, are you still sleeping and taking your rest? It is enough. He said, this is enough. He was like, he was tired. And he said, the hour has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand.
Yeah. And, you know, I just thought about it too, how it said, are you still sleeping? And we had read before leaving that it said, do not be caught sleeping, because you'll never know, you know. And here, like, we see that. And I was also telling Melanie, like, reading all of this story, it's like when you're in, like we said, like in a desperation, in a need, and you tell a friend, you're like, oh, can you pray for me? And then that friend's just like, oh yeah, don't worry, you're my prayers, I got you, you know, I'll be praying for you. And then you never pray for that friend. But like here, Jesus needed that in a way for James, John, and Peter to also be praying, you know, because this was a huge event. It just wasn't anything like, oh, you know, something casual. No, it was something like dramatic and like something huge. And it's like relating it back to us, like when you're going through something dramatic, something huge, it's always best to have people surrounding you with prayer.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. I feel like Jesus was first of all, he was in agony, right? So he was like, oh, I need support. And then for the disciples to not support him in the way that he needed, I feel like Jesus was so frustrated. And I feel like he might have even been a little mad as to like come on, like I've done all of this for you and you can't even like stay away from me and pray with me. I feel like I would have been like more mad than Jesus was, because I would have been like yelling at them, honestly. So then we move on to the part where it gets to the point where they arrest Jesus. And he was still speaking. Jesus was still speaking when Judas came. One of the two, like Ashley said. And you guys, this is crazy because he kissed Jesus on the cheek.
Yeah, because that was a sign.
Yeah, that was a sign. He told the priest,
yeah,
the one I kiss
is the one you have to arrest.
And I was telling Ashley, I was like, how is he so hypocrite that he kissed Jesus on the cheek?
And not only that, but he said, Rabbi.
I was like,
oh my gosh, like,
you got to be kidding me. I was like, this is crazy. Like, no way.
Such a hypocrite, bro.
And once they saw that he kissed him, they seized him and they laid hands on him. And Jesus said to them, have you come out against the robber with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day I was with you in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me, but let the scriptures be fulfilled.
Yeah.
God, I feel like Jesus there was being very calm. You know, she was like, well, you got me. Okay.
Yeah. That last part, but let the scriptures be fulfilled. Jesus went along in order for the scriptures to be fulfilled. You know, he could have easily like done something.
He could have destroyed the small army that they had.
Yeah. But like I told Melanie, that wasn't, you know, God's purpose or God's plan, you know. And the scriptures were fulfilled because Jesus was obedient and because Jesus was strengthened to take the cup. And now we go to the next part, which is Jesus before the council. So here he was led to the high priest, you know, and very important part, Peter had followed him at a distance. And the chief priest and the whole council, they were trying to seek something against Jesus in order to put him to death. And they were just trying to find something to accuse Jesus, you know, and they kept like, oh, well, this, no, well, this. And Jesus, at all this time, he remained silent and made no answer. We, like Melanie said, we see here the character of Jesus, which is very patient, calm, and just like in a way, like helping and like scriptures be fulfilled, because that's what needed to happen. And a high priest asked him, are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? And Jesus said, I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. That's all Jesus said all along, all this time. That's all he said, starting with the famous I am. And the high priest tore his garments and said, what further witnesses do we need? This is blasphemy. You know, he is saying that he is I am. He is saying that he is the Christ for something that he truly is. You know, he is, you know, the Messiah. And right after that, right after Jesus saying I am, he was accused and they started to beat him up.
That's crazy.
And like just all of that, you know, like, and they even said, you know, he is deserving of death. For something, you know, like what was like the accusation, what was wrong? Nothing. It's just that they like, you know, they had,
Sorry.
yeah.
That's crazy.
And they just had a huge desire of killing him.
So then we move on to the next part, which is Peter denies Jesus. And starting off, like Ashley said, I feel like Peter's first mistake was following Jesus at a distance.
Yeah.
And I feel like Peter, in a way, he wanted to seem like part of the crowd and not a follower of Jesus.
Yeah, he was like one leg in and one leg out, like, oh, okay, I want to see, but oh no.
Like I want to be close enough to hear, but not close enough to be part of it.
Yeah.
And a girl from the high priest came and saw Peter, and she was like, you were also with the Nazarene Jesus, no? And then he was like,
no, not me. That's a different Peter. That's not me.
You're confusing me. And he went on to say, I neither know nor understand what you mean. So he was like,
I don't know. He basically there he was like saying, I don't know who Jesus is.
Who is he?
I've never heard of him.
Yeah. And he went out to the gateway and the rooster crowed. And yet again, the girl saw him and he denied it again. She was like, this man is one of them. And he was like, no, I told you I'm not gonna leave it alone. And he denied it again. And after a little while, the bystanders again said to Peter, certainly you are one of them. And he kept saying like, I'm not. Like, what do you guys mean? And he said, I do not know this man of whom you speak. So he flat out was like, no, I don't know who Jesus is. So
it's not me
about it. You're confusing me. And immediately the rooster crowed a second time. And that's when Peter was like, dang, like
he remembered what Jesus said.
Jesus he was like, I just remember what he said. And he said, before the rooster crows twice, he will deny me 3 times. And he realized what he just did, and he broke down and wept.
Yeah, and fear caused Peter to sin. You know, like the fear of what was going to happen to him, because like he knew, he was seeing, you know, that they were beating Jesus up, and he's like, oh my gosh, what did they do that to me if I say that I was a follower of Jesus, you know? So fear caused him to say no. Fear caused him to deny Jesus. And I guess the question that I asked myself was like, what has fear caused me to do or not do? You know, because it goes both ways, and fear can be very dangerous in a way sometimes, you know, because like here we saw how fear like caused Peter just to do all of this. So that was it for today. We just went over chapter 14 because there's so much to unravel and just so much to speak about, but we will continue on with the crucifixion of Jesus and just going more into what they do and just like everything that goes on. And also we are now kind of going to change it up a little bit. We're going to be releasing an episode every other week, just so we can just fully prepare better and just come up with better, you know, series, and just start, you know, more efficient. And yeah, but we're so glad that we're back, and we're so, yeah, we missed you guys. But thank you so much for listening and watching. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. God bless you.